Welcome to another episode of Six Figure Secrets for Fractional Experts. My name is Bradley Jacobs. I'm the founder and CEO of Mylance and your host today. Today, I'm joined by Christopher Filipiak. Christopher is a sales consultant and coach for CEOs, helps CEOs succeed at their own sales work with a background in engineering, data analytics, and Fortune 100 consulting, combining strategy, execution, and mindset transformation to create sales-ready organizations that can make sales consistently and profitably. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bradley. So good to be here with you today. Thanks for having me on and looking forward to an amazing conversation.
Awesome. Me as well. So give us, how did you get into sales, right? We both have a background in engineering, clearly not doing that anymore. How did this come to be?
Yeah, the journey from engineer to sales.
Yeah, not a common one.
So grew up just outside Detroit. Cars were a big part of the culture there. As I was growing up, the path to life success was engineering into getting your MBA. So I was like, cool, I'm good at math. I love cars. I'll go to school. Went to University of Michigan, studied industrial and operations engineering, which is the integration of people and machine systems. Worked for Ford Motor Company for several years, building F-150s and Mustangs, mostly in lean manufacturing, process improvement, continuous improvement there. And I would always tell my sales managers, I was a good engineer, but I always tell my managers on my performance reviews, I want to be with the people and the money. And they'd be like, what in the heck does that even mean? And I'm like, I don't know, but that's what I want to do. Ended up going back to school at Wake Forest down here in North Carolina because the weather's better than in Michigan. And from there, took a job at a small enterprise mid-market consulting firm doing basically business development work. And that's ultimately what I meant with the people and the money. I have a real love of people and helping people grow and a really good handle on how to do sales work. From there, I started my consulting firm in 2017, and this will be beneficial for your audience because, like most of them, I'm also a small business, started as a solopreneur, fractional work. And the way that I got there was by just going around to all the CEOs that I knew here in Asheville, North Carolina, and saying, hey, can I sell for you on a fractional basis? Called it business development as a service at the time. And what that really taught me is how to build up my own systems to be able to sell for multiple companies successfully. And I also noticed that the internal systems and the business foundations of the businesses I was working with were severely lacking. And so their salespeople weren't performing or weren't even set up to be able to perform. So I started working with those business owners on helping them build out their sales systems and building out their sales teams. Hit my own kind of terror barriers, plateaus in my business, started learning more about mindset and was like, oh, this is cool. I need to bring that into the work that I do with my clients, brought mindset coaching into the mix. And then right after the pandemic, Bradley, in 2021, 2022, I did some bench work for a much larger consulting firm that was in the business of staffing salespeople. And as part of that work, they needed someone to come in and do all the sales operation assessments and scaling roadmaps for their clients. And so within a period of about a year, I was under the hood of under 100 businesses doing deep dive sales operation assessments, as well as doing my own market research on salespeople, CEOs, sellers. And what I found is that the majority of the time, the businesses themselves were missing or lacking something within their sales operations that was preventing them from being successful, and that they hired and fired salespeople at an incredible rate. 3.25 salespeople on average are hired by small business CEOs, and a lot of those CEOs are back to being the primary salesperson for their business. So that was like a really interesting data point. And it's super expensive strategy to fail at. Like a failed salesperson is like a $450,000
Wow.
hit to the business. And then when I did the pro formas, you could look at the amount of revenue that the business wanted to add. And it was like, oh man, you should just have the CEO do this work. So I really started to wrap my business around supporting CEOs to do their own sales work. And in every company, I have clients. I have a lot of smaller clients that are some clients I've kind of moved my business a little bit, but where I started was really working with founder sellers, small agencies, small consulting firms. But now I have clients up to 200 million in revenue, and those CEOs are still involved in driving sales, right? So like, I know a lot of CEOs will be like, I want to get out of business development and sales, but I've kind of leaned in that direction going, hey, you should drive revenue for your business, and probably having some support to do that with or without a sales team. I don't have a preference for that, but if you did want to stand up a sales team, there are some logical steps based on cause and effect to make that go more successfully. And so that's where I'm at.
Wow. Amazing. Thanks for the background there, Christopher.
Yeah.
So one of the products that we originally built at Mylance was essentially a curated list of companies to target. So for your fractional business, you're a fractional CMO, you specialize in fintech SaaS companies, and we could find you the top 20 companies, top 50 companies this month that you should be going after, along with the decision makers. If I gave you that list and you are this fractional CMO and you're like, okay, you have access to this list, what would you set up to be the most effective in nurturing those leads, or eventually, getting to the point where you would get on the phone and have, at a minimum, an introductory call with those people?
Yeah. So you're kind of asking how, sales comes down to creating and having conversations. So that's kind of the two pieces, right?
Yep.
You talked a lot about conversations on your last podcast. So, you can think of creating conversations as marketing, and then having conversations is like, how do you actually talk to another human that moves them to a decision to buy or work with your firm. And so when, you're handed a list, the list is the strategy to start with. So it's going like, hey, are these really our people? And if you're like, these are actually our people, then it's about, what is my message to them going to be? And what are I'll call them marketing plays. What are the plays that we're going to run to help create a conversation with them? Okay. Typically my business and many small fractional business owners' businesses are driven on relationships and referrals, but it's like, how do you bring in the new people so you can relationship nurturing them?
Right.
And so I would typically do cold outreach via LinkedIn, email, and then on the phone. So you give me that list. I'm reaching out to them on LinkedIn. I'm engaging with their content. I'm calling them on the phone, and I'm sending them an email, right? 50% of that list are probably going to engage with me at some level. Some proportion of those I'm going to book intro calls with right away. Everyone else, relationship nurturing based on level of decision, whether that's quarterly, annually, right, based on the relevance. And I think if you do those things, you're going to make sales. But that would be my typical approach. And as I'm engaging that list, I'm testing messaging. I'm talking with them and kind of seeing what works. So yeah.
Most of our listeners are independent, right? They're businesses of one, and they don't have a salesperson. They probably don't have a sales background. But more importantly, they just don't have the time, right? They're serving clients 30, 40 hours a week. And so let's just say they make 5-7 hours a week for business development, marketing, and sales. What do you recommend they do at that time?
I'll tell you what I do.
Yeah.
Because I'll just tell you what I do. So I always do. So every day I do some amount of cold outreach, right? My business has been driven off cold outreach and relationship nurturing. Okay, so those two things I've just been super consistent with. Then I do a monthly event. Okay, so I do a monthly event. I call it CEO Sanctuary. It's a work session where I invite relevant decision makers to come participate in that. You'll love this. I write content, right? On LinkedIn, because that's where
Love
my
it.
people are. Content. Oh, and I do this.
And podcast.
And podcasts. That's what I would recommend. That's a pretty good set of marketing plays, and you can get that done, in about an hour a day. And that you'll have to carve out time. That's like an hour a day of probably creating conversations, and then you'll have to make time to have conversations.
Sure.
But I know the time a lot of solopreneurs, small business owners think they need to be working all the time, and they take their foot off the gas of business development. And it's like taking the seed out of the ground and going, why haven't you grown yet? When it's like, no, like I'd much rather see you do 30 minutes every day than 8 hours on a Friday.
Yeah.
That consistency really, really matters. So that's what I do. And that's typically what I recommend. I think when you're choosing marketing plays, you want to choose them based on what actually works and what you're actually willing to do consistently.
How can you show up every week doing the same things over it? Right. Because if you hate podcasting, for example, and you hate having these conversations, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, right? You don't want to make yourself miserable every week. But if you enjoy writing or you enjoy I don't know, right? Like whatever the activity is that you actually genuinely enjoy.
Speaking, right, writing,
right.
Lesson learns, content, podcast.
Right, pick something.
There's just, Bradley, there's so many marketing plays you can run, but you don't want to get confused about what you're actually,
right.
what you're doing.
Yeah. And I tell people all the time, there's no one right answer to this.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can say what you think you should do. I'll tell you what I think you should do. But at the end of the day, I'm a pretty big believer. If you take the consistent action over time and are learning and iterating and testing, any one of these strategies can be effective, including SEO, including paid ads. Like I would never recommend those for a fractional. But if you were an SEO expert and you just decided you were going to nail SEO for your fractional business and it was going to get you clients, I would bet people could figure it out. Like I'm sure people do.
Yeah. Yeah, they all work. They all work, right? At some level, and they work based on the mindset you're bringing and energy you're bringing to the activity, and your skill level within the activity. Like cold calling cold calling is so effective for connecting with people, right? But people don't do it, and they don't have the skill at it. But again, if you handed me that list of 50 and I needed to drive revenue for my business today, like I'm not working on my website. Like I'm calling those 50 people. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my, I think, most passionate topics is the working on your website kind of activity just does not move the needle. Yeah. It just doesn't. Right. And I'm going to argue most fractionals don't need a website. Mm-hmm. Like to maintain and look beautiful and pay for and all this kind of stuff. It's like, no, don't spend time maintaining your website. Spend time reaching out to those 50 people.
Yeah.
One's much more comfortable than the other, but one drives revenue much more than the other.
Well, you hit on a really interesting point, and I talk about this with my clients a lot, and this kind of comes into my engineering background about taking waste out of systems, and this is kind of why I do the work that I do, because sales is ultimately a system of systems, and it's just about process. It's just like you're lining up workflows and you're integrating people into those workflows. So, but what a lot of people do is they'll pick strategies based on what's comfortable for them and not based on cause and effect. And it's almost like they're picking, I always say, don't pick strategies based on your own fear, right? They're like fear-driven strategies because they're like, oh, I don't like to do that, or that scares me or makes me uncomfortable. No, like pick the strategies that's going to lead to the effect that you want as quickly as possible, and do the inner work so you can grow and change to overcome whatever's going on. inside yourself.
Yeah, I love that. As you talked about doing outbound, specifically on LinkedIn, I mean, our inboxes are flooded these days, right? No one's immune to it. So there's people reaching out all the time trying to sell me, whatever, all of the above. I'm sure everyone gets it. I know it is effective. I've seen it myself with outbound, but it takes a very specific approach to be effective, to get the responses, to get a genuine connection that has the potential to get on that call and eventually potentially be a client. As you think this day and age with AI and anybody can spin up a big campaign reaching out to 100 people a week, what kind of messages are you sending these days as an intro message that is not coming across as disingenuous or spammy or just immediately trying to sell something? What does that look like for you?
I just try to be direct and honest about what I'm doing. So I'll say something like, hey, Bradley, your work inspired me to reach out and connect, right? So it's like I keep it you-centric, so it's about you, right? So that's like a big thing you can do. Your work and your purpose inspired me to reach out and connect. I'd love to connect with you and see if it makes sense to start a conversation, right? And it's like I'm reaching out to have a conversation, and I'm very clear that I'm a service provider and that I work with, CEOs to help them succeed at sales. And I think most mature business owners, I don't mean older, but like where they're at in their entrepreneurial maturity, are going to be open and untriggered to someone reaching out to offer help, because we're in the business of growing, and you know that you need help to do that. And then based on that, I'll just flow into a conversation with that. And I book intro calls every day off of LinkedIn. Again, there's some things, and you help your clients with this too, is again, the list matters, right? The list is a big part of the strategy. The message, right, is a big part of the strategy. And then what your profile looks like, right? Your LinkedIn profile, because people are going to look, right? They're going to look. And then just engaging with their content, right? If you do those 4 things well, you can book intro calls with people fairly easily.
Love it. I mean, I love how simply you're presenting it too, because it kind of becomes this big, I don't know how to do this. Nothing I've tried works. And I think at the end of the day, what you're saying is not so crazy, right? It's like relatively simple. Like, get a clean profile that shows what you do, be honest in your outreach, engage with their content. It's not that hard. And yet I think just people are unwilling to just do the work, right? We all want these quick wins. We want like the automation that just works for us, that we put on in the background. And at the end of the day, when you're willing, I feel like half my podcast guests, we end up coming to the same point of like, when you're willing to go just slightly further than everybody else, you're going to be more successful. That's what it takes.
Yeah. And again, all of that silver bullet searching is like fear driving the strategy, because ultimately what's going on is they're looking for a way not to be rejected, for a way to be liked, right? You're going to reach out to people and they're not going to like it. You're going to reach out to people and, a lot of them aren't going to want or need what you have, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're searching for your people, right? Who you can help, in the people who can fully value what you bring to the table, and everyone else is just not your people, and that's okay,
Yeah. That's getting over that rejection, that, because I've gotten notes, leave me alone, or right. We've all gotten the note you don't want to receive.
Yep.
And it's honestly just part of it. Like, I don't really know if I am the right solution, or if you have a problem that even I need to solve. It'd be amazing if we lived in a world where everyone just put all their problems on a spreadsheet and we could go solve them all. But right. So I'm going to hit on some people that just aren't interested, and they might be nasty at me, and that needs to be okay. I need to be like, okay. And if someone's nasty to me, frankly, it says a lot more about them than it does about me. Right.
it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Like
Right.
you're here to help people and
Right.
show up in service.
Let me ask you around the mindset piece, because I know in some of your materials you talk about reframing selling, right? Selling can feel icky, it can feel gross. I mean, so many fractionals come from a W 2 job where they didn't have to do any selling. And then they go into their own business ownership and now they need to be selling themselves and they cringe. They just, it feels so gross to them. I know you have a reframe for that. What do you tell those people?
Yeah. So if you're going to change a belief in your mind, right? Because our beliefs come from our experience, you have to start with like some new thoughts, right? And so when I work with my clients, we talk about this idea of um, sales as an expression of love, sales as an act of love, right? And it not being something you do to other people, but something you do for other
Mm,
people, right? Like when I show up in a sales conversation, um, I show up with the energy that I'm here to give my clients money because I help CEOs add revenue to their business. Like
yeah.
I'm not actually here to get anything from other people. I'm here to help you, give you more money, right? And so you have a new thought that like sales is good. So you're just walking around like right, and this is where coaching or mindset work can help. You're like, oh shit, I actually have real stories or real trauma around money and strangers, which is where what we mostly do in sales. And so, I talked about this, I almost always talk about this with my clients, but like that emotional state, those feelings are in your body. So having some tools to help metabolize that and move that out of your nervous system can be really helpful. But then it's like, what do you want? Oh, I actually want sales to be easy. Okay, right. I want a feeling like, oh, I enjoy sales. Well, you got to put some new thoughts in your head, right? Going, hey, the money is here. Sales is something I do for people. Sales is an act of service. I am I'm lovable, I'm good enough, I'm worthy, right? And build that up and do that internal work because when that shifts, you're going to show up differently and you're going to have different conversations. And that's the problem with most of the outreach that you see, and especially a lot of the AI outreach that's happening. And I'm not saying they can't be effective tools, but the way those conversations are set up is super old school and super manipulative, and it's coming
Mm,
from a get energy, right? And from a I need this. It's coming from like a real place of scarcity instead of, hey, like if I had all the money that I wanted, right? If I was like Richard Branson, right? Like, or like, how does that dude show up? Like, he's made of the same space dust we all are. Like, and you can show up the same. It's like, no, like, all the money is here. I'm here to provide people amazing service. Sales is an expression of love. And it's just continuing to remind yourself of that until you get a different result. And ultimately, that different result over time, it will reprogram those underlying beliefs. And that's how you change your belief system.
yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. So if we put it into practice for a fractional CMO,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and maybe it's too similar to sales. Maybe let's go more the product route. So I'm like a product consultant to some degree, and I help you, whether it's with your roadmap or figure out what products to be building or how to get feedback from customers, those kinds of things. And I'm looking for clients. What is the reframe for that kind of a person where they can come at as instead of I need clients, what is their give?
Yeah, it's the same thing. They're going to give that person more life.
Hmm.
They're giving them a solution to the problem, right? Like, it's kind of like, I always use the example. Did you ever see the Fast and Furious with Paul Walker, right?
Yep.
He's an engineer, right? So it was all about building a 10-second car, right?
Yep.
So Paul Walker could beat Vin Diesel. And
Mm-hmm.
so Paul Walker is like, walks into the part shop and is like, hey, I need a 10-second car. And the mechanic's like, well, you need nitrous oxide, right? You need NOS. And they're like, that's it, right? It's like Paul Walker had a problem, right? We all have problems. There's always a gap between where we are and where we want to go, right? And um, as a product consultant, right? You're here to help that person provide them the vehicle, essentially the vehicle or the methodology or the product, so that they can get to what they want, right?
Mm,
And that's all your job is like to understand what people want and match up, whether it's a 10-second car or it's a pepperoni pizza because you're hungry, or it's to add $1 million of revenue in your business, whatever that want is, as the service provider, it's going, oh, my thing helps them do the work or provides them the opportunity to have what they
yeah.
want, right?
Yeah.
And you're just kind of connecting that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you come from a technical background, right? The engineering and data analytics. How has that foundation helped you shape your approach in helping entrepreneurs improve their sales strategies?
I think the biggest thing is like this idea of eliminating waste from a
Mm,
system. So like you talk about websites, like websites are a pretty large waste, and I'm sure you did like value stream mapping, right? Where you look at a process and you're like, this is the beginning state, this is the end state. Where in this development of what we're trying to create is there value in what actually is waste? And so you try to take waste out of the system. So part of that is just designing and creating um, simplified workflows. So if you start at the workflow level, whether it's your sales process or your sales workflow or your marketing process and your marketing workflow, designing simple workflows based on cause and effect, and then looking at that workflow and going, hey, where can we use technology, right, to help simplify that workflow, right? Or automate that workflow or make that workflow more profitable, right? Or faster.
yeah.
Uh, that's the way to do it, is to start with it like it at the, what is it you want? What's the process to accomplish that? And then bring in technology. A lot of people do that opposite. They start with the technology and go, how can we use technology to do our thing? I saw a company that I follow just launched like an AI recruiter for salespeople yesterday. I'm like, oh, that's cool, right? But if your business doesn't actually need salespeople, right? Because you can drive it based on your own CEO sales. You're going to follow that technology, and then you're going to be recruiting salespeople, and then you're going to have salespeople, but it's not actually going to be the result that you
Yeah.
want. And then the analytics comes in just to measure based on whatever goals or outcomes you
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
Around the technology piece, I'm curious to go a minute into AI, right? I mean, it's been a revolution the last number of years and it's accelerating. It's only going one direction. It enables so much automation and, some customization within the automations. Where do you see it being really powerful for salespeople? Part one, and then part two, what are the mistakes to avoid? Like what is the not to do, how to use it incorrectly that people should really avoid?
I wouldn't say that I've mastered AI at any level, right? It's like a very rapidly evolving.
Yeah.
Um, I use it as a thought partner, right, or as a starting point for what I'm working on, right. And I also use it to feed in all of my brand information, all of what I know about my clients, like what I would call like my people, my avatars, my personas, feed all that information in. And from a content, you talk about content from a contact perspective, you can ask AI like what's relevant to this group of people,
Yeah.
right? Or what's like when you're doing outreach, what's relevant for this person now, and what are some approaches to reach out to them. So it's really good for thought partnership and creating new ideas and summarizing information. That's how I use it. I think you could also use it to, like anything you have to produce for a client, right? Like just run that through AI. It just like is so much more efficient. Where AI struggles is, I think you have to be really careful around turning over your own authority and sovereignty to AI, right? Like people naturally want to be told what to do. And again, they don't want to be rejected and they don't want to make mistakes. Those are natural, like human tendencies because they push up against our desire for survival. If you give away your sovereignty or your power to AI, right? Like AI is an aggregator of information. It's not a creator of new yet, right? Like that's a very human, unique ability. It also, you want to hold on to your ability to make your own choices and decisions and think critically about. So by think critically, you want to ask yourself, like, what's the truth about this, and start looking at what's coming back and if it actually gets you where you want to go. So you don't want to take yourself out of, someone like that. It's the same with humans. Like you don't want to give your power away to other humans.
Anything I didn't ask you that you want to share or think would be helpful for our audience?
When we were setting this up, Bradley, one of the topics I talk about are like the 5 daily habits that CEOs can focus on. And that list has been shifting around, but I'll give you the current list if you're open to it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, just to leave, and I think this works for anyone, but the first habit, and this wasn't on my original list, but I was kind of chuckling to myself this week. The first habit is sales. You just want to develop a habit of making sales, right? Just so it's like, oh, today I get like just the same as you open up your phone or go to bed or make coffee. You just want to build this habit of making sales. And then from there, it's like clarity on what it is you want, a habit of feeling your feelings, just learning, because we get triggered every day, all day. So like, how do I, whenever I notice myself out of alignment or triggered, how do I feel my feelings? Using your calendar, right? And kind of as an addition to that is just keeping your word. Like put stuff on your calendar, actually do it. If you're not going to do it, don't put it on your calendar. And then the last one is, this kind of goes with what it is you want, but lining up what you want based on cause and effect. So I think this is where a lot of waste comes in. But like if you want whatever it is you want, that result has very specific or causes. And the more linear you can be between what it is you want and what causes that, right? So like if you want bigger biceps, like the cause of that is like curls, right? It's not working on your website or like drinking a smoothie or whatever, but like you're going to try all these different things. So building a habit of thinking through the lens of cause and effect, I think is the 5th habit. So sales, clarity on what you want, feeling your feelings, calendar, and cause and effect thinking.
Wow. Yeah. Some on there I certainly wouldn't expect to be in a list of 5. So, but I love it. And I'm glad you shared that with us, especially the feeling your feelings. I think a lot of entrepreneurs wouldn't have that at the top of their list, and being one myself definitely resonates how important that is to just feel what's going on and not let it just percolate inside my body, then come out in some other way that doesn't serve me. So
yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Where can people find you if they want to work with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So linkedin.com/Christopher Filipiak, or at my website, ChristopherFilipiak.com.
Okay. Yeah. Great. We'll link both in the show notes so people can easily find you.
Awesome. That sounds incredible.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise with us. It's been incredible conversation, super helpful.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And thanks for having me on the show again. Tons of gratitude for you and for the audience members who are listening.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Christopher.